One book at a time. Today's selection is Self-Help.
Have you ever wondered, why is it that, starting from the same line, some people rise strongly and achieve success, while others struggle and flail indefinitely? Have you ever watched someone overcome every adversity, rising resiliently from the ruins, and thought to yourself, what is their secret? Or are they just luckier than me? I believe the answer lies neither in luck nor fate, nor is it because they were born at the finish line, as many people jokingly say. Instead, it lies in a single choice, a deeper, more fundamental choice about where to place the source of one's own power. I vividly remember the story of a friend I once knew. She went through a catastrophe so terrible that it seemed impossible to recover. Her family fell apart, her career collapsed, and her health was depleted. She fell into the depths of despair. Everyone around her felt pity and wanted to help. But then, instead of waiting for someone to pull her up, she began to crawl, bit by bit, finding meaning in the fragments and rebuilding her life from scratch. She read books, she learned, she failed, and then she rose again. Today, she not only stands firm, but has become a version of herself stronger than ever, serving as an inspiration for thousands of others. What enabled her, and so many others, to achieve that? Certainly, outside help is wonderful. It is a life buoy in times of crisis. But we must be honest with each other that external assistance, no matter how well-intentioned, sometimes turns into a crutch, making us weak and dependent. It helps us travel a certain distance, but it does not teach us how to walk steadily on our own 2 feet. Meanwhile, effort from within, the strength tempered through trials, forged from will and determination, is what truly transforms us into a resilient and indomitable version of ourselves. That is when you realize that you are not just a tenant in your own life. You are the chief engineer, the architect of it. You have the power to build your future, brick by brick, from the solid foundation of your own inner strength. Your life, after all, is a grand project, and you are the one holding the ultimate blueprint, the person responsible for every line and every detail of it. In a world full of advice and quick fixes from the outside, we sometimes forget that the greatest source of power lies deep within each of us. And this is exactly the message that the book Self-Help, which we are about to explore, wants to convey. It does not promise to save you, but it will help you find the key to save yourself, to create the life you have always desired. Are you ready? Let us begin this journey together to find out how you can become the most talented architect of your own life. Chapter 1: Self-Help, the source of all development. In this first chapter, we will together affirm the core value of helping oneself, laying the first brick for a proactive and powerful mindset. Have you ever heard this saying, "Heaven helps those who help themselves"? This is not just a mere proverb, but a profound philosophy of life that transcends all cultures and beliefs. Even in the scriptures of major religions, we find a similar message that no miracle automatically falls upon you if you do not lift a finger to do anything. So, what exactly is heaven helps here? Is it some deity bestowing luck upon you, or a magical coincidence? I believe that heaven helps is the flow of life, the opportunities and invisible resources that begin to manifest when we actively create energy and action. Imagine this: if you do not sow seeds, is there any hope of harvesting a crop? No matter how favorable the weather or how fertile the soil, if the seeds are not planted, everything becomes meaningless. Similarly, when you pour your heart and soul into something, when you explore, learn, fall, and rise again on your own, you will see new paths opening up and resources appearing from somewhere to support you. It could be a friend who happens to share an experience, a book you accidentally read that solves your problem, or simply the clarity and perseverance that you yourself have cultivated. It is not a passive waiting, but a proactive creation of premises. That saying puts power directly into your hands, evokes personal responsibility, and affirms that you are the architect of your own life. And when you bravely accept that responsibility, that is exactly when the universe begins to join forces with you. We all want to be sheltered and loved. Since birth, we have been protected by our families, and as we grow up, the state provides social welfare. These are wonderful and necessary things, serving as a foundation so that each individual can develop with peace of mind. But let us visualize more clearly these two aspects, which are protection and independence. If a tree is shielded too carefully and never has to face wind and rain, will its roots be deep enough to hold firm when a storm strikes? Will the trunk be sturdy enough to reach high to ward the sunlight, or will it become weak and easily broken? Similarly, if a child is never allowed to fall, never has to solve a small problem on their own, can they develop resilience, adaptability, and creative thinking? Or when they grow up and face the real challenges of life without a protective hand, will that person become confused and lost? Protection is necessary in the early stages, but if prolonged excessively, it can turn into a golden cage, safe yet stifling potential. It can create dependency and wither the capacity for self-reliance and self-strength. Conversely, independence does not mean being lonely. Independence is our proactive search, learning, skill training, and taking responsibility for our own lives. It is the realization that despite having loved ones and support around us, the journey of maturity to overcome difficulties must ultimately be our own. It is when you walk confidently because you know you can stand firm on your own feet without fear of paths never traveled before. Independence not only makes you stronger, but also helps you appreciate the help of others more, because you truly understand the value of effort. You know that each help received is a resource for you to continue developing, not a lifebuoy for you to stop swimming. From individual strength, let us expand to a larger vision, which is the nation. Is a strong nation merely one with abundant resources or a powerful military? That is true, but it is certainly not enough. A truly strong and sustainable nation is the sum total of millions of strong and independent individuals. When each individual has a sense of self-reliance, actively learns, innovates, and takes responsibility for their own life, they create a massive flow of energy. Think about it. A farmer who explores new farming methods to increase productivity, a worker who learns technology to improve product quality, an entrepreneur who tinkers with a startup to create jobs, or a scientist who researches to find solutions for societal issues. Each act of self-help not only benefits them personally, but also contributes directly to the overall development of the community, the economy, and the entire nation. When every citizen is a solid, independent brick capable of managing on their own, the collective wall of the nation becomes truly firm and sustainable against all storms. Conversely, if the majority of citizens are passive, waiting for subsidies or waiting for someone else to solve their problems, then no matter how much potential the nation has, it will become weak, lifeless, and easily shaken. That is exactly why Samuel Smiles's book, Self-Help, though born over a century ago, still retains its value. It is not only a compass for each individual, but also a reminder for any society that wishes to rise strongly. True strength does not come from dependency, but from the self-reliance of every citizen. Thus, through Chapter 1 with the theme, Self-Help is the source of all development, we have together affirmed an unshakable value that you are the one holding the key to your own development. From the saying, "Heaven helps those who help themselves," to recognizing the boundary between protection and independence, and finally seeing the close link between individual strength and national strength. Self-reliance is not loneliness, but the confidence and proactivity to master your own life while contributing to greater values. In the following chapters, we will dive deeper into each aspect of self-help to discover the qualities, stories, and invaluable lessons that the book Self-Help has distilled. Chapter 2: Inventors and the Spirit of Industry. We will start with the story of a real character, a name that many of you might never have heard before. But his life is a valuable lesson in will and perseverance, and that is Richard Arkwright. Sounds unfamiliar, doesn't it? But he is a vivid testament to how far diligence can take a person. Arkwright did not start his career as an engineer or a talented scientist. He was actually a barber. That is right, a common barber. An ordinary job, even a humble one, with no appearance of creating a millionaire or an industrial revolutionary. His life at that time seemed destined for scissors, razors, and small talk by the hot water basin. But Arkwright possessed an unceasing curiosity and a powerful desire for improvement. He saw potential in the fledgling textile industry of Great Britain and began to spend his free time, and even his not-so-free time, tinkering with machinery. He spent many years perfecting the water-powered spinning frame known as the water frame, a machine that later completely changed the face of the textile industry. Can you imagine it? A person with no degree, no professional training, only with perseverance and faith in his ideas, taught himself and experimented by himself. It was not an overnight success, nor was it giving up after a few failed attempts. Arkwright faced skepticism, ridicule, continuous failures, and even unfair competition from others. He had to sleep in squalid attics, borrow money everywhere, and face poverty throughout his research process. But Arkwright did not give up. After every fall, he stood up, learned, and improved again. He poured all his mind, strength, and even his last coins into making his dream a reality. And eventually, that perseverance paid off handsomely. His water frame revolutionized the textile industry, increasing productivity many times over and opening the era of mass production factories. From an ordinary barber, Arkwright became one of the wealthiest and most powerful industrialists of his time, was knighted, and was dubbed the father of the modern factory system. So, what is the first lesson drawn from Arkwright's story? It is summarized in a famous saying that I love: genius is long patience. Was Arkwright a born genius, someone with superior intelligence from the womb? Probably not. His genius did not lie in his IQ, but in his endurance, his ability to focus unceasingly on a single goal and persistently pursuing it through thousands of trials and errors, through tens of thousands of hours of hard work. I think it is the same in our lives. We often admire successful people and call them geniuses, but we rarely see the thousands of hours they poured sweat, tears, and even frustration into their work. Real success is not the result of a flash of inspiration, but the sum of unceasing efforts and incredible persistence in facing failures and learning from them. Genius is actually another word for ultimate perseverance, and this is the second key point, a perspective that the book Self-Help made me think a lot about, and I believe it will change how you view your work, which is, labor is not a punishment, but an honor. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, doesn't it? Many of us view work as a burden, something we must do to make a living and pay the bills. We long for a life of doing nothing, or only doing what we like without having to face pressure. But Samuel Smiles, the author of the book, and I completely agree, argues that honest labor is the path for human beings to develop themselves, to train their will, intellect, and character. When we work, we do not just create material value for others or for society. More importantly, we create value for ourselves. We learn how to face difficulties, how to solve problems, how to work in a team, and how to take responsibility. Every project completed, every task entrusted and performed with dedication is a brick building who we are. Labor brings us self-respect, a sense of self-worth, and a place in society. It is the way we prove our abilities. It is the way we contribute to the community and the world around us. When we work hard with enthusiasm and responsibility, we are living a meaningful life, not just existing. So, look at your work, not just as an obligation, but as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to become better every day. That is an honor we should cherish. The story of Richard Arkwright is not just a dry page of history about the Industrial Revolution. It is a reminder that diligence, patience, and an untiring spirit of labor are the foundation bricks for all success. No matter what job you are doing, no matter what your goal is, remember that every hour of work and every effort you put in is building who you are and the life you dream of. Embrace your work with pride, because it is not just how you make a living, it is how you live a truly meaningful life. Chapter 3: Application and Perseverance. In this chapter, we will dive deep into an extremely important part, which could be called the heart of every self-improvement process: application and perseverance. Does it sound dry? Don't worry. I guarantee that by the time we finish this chapter, you will look at those two concepts with a completely different eye. If the theme of this chapter had to be summarized in one sentence, it would be the power of doing something over and over again and not giving up. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But the hidden power in that repetition, the power of constantly moving forward, even if slowly, is the thing that changes lives. Have you ever wondered what the secret behind great inventions or breakthrough discoveries is? Is it a bolt of lightning hitting the head, an explosive eureka moment, or a superior genius brain? Certainly, the element of genius has its role. But look at Sir Isaac Newton, who laid the foundation for classical mechanics and invented calculus. People often tell the story of the falling apple as a miraculous moment of brilliance. But did you know that before announcing the law of universal gravitation, Newton spent years, even decades, researching, calculating, and being obsessed with that problem? When the apple fell, many people just saw it as a normal occurrence. But Newton was different. He took the time to observe, think, and question incessantly. His concentration was so high that legends say he could forget to eat or sleep just to solve a math problem. That was not just intelligence. It was perseverance to the point of obsession. It was the constant thinking and testing, even when it seemed like no answer was present. He did it over and over again in his mind, on paper, and in experiments until the complete picture gradually emerged. And I bet you have had moments like that too. Times when you keep thinking about a problem, wanting to find the answer, and being unable to let go. That is part of the power of perseverance we are talking about. Newton's story brings us to a key point of difference that the book wants to emphasize. The difference between an intelligent person and a persistent person. Our society often celebrates intelligence. It is true that intelligence is a great advantage because intelligent people can grasp issues faster and come up with more creative solutions in a short time. But there is something even more powerful, more enduring, and sometimes far more decisive for success. That is perseverance. You see, intelligent people can understand quickly, but if they lack perseverance, they can easily give up when they encounter the first obstacle or when things do not go as planned. They might tell themselves that this is too difficult and not for them. In contrast, persistent people, even if they might not be the fastest or brightest at first, will not stop until they actually succeed. They keep doing, keep trying, keep learning from mistakes, and keep finding ways to overcome even the smallest barriers. They are like water wearing away stone, drop by drop, tiny, but eventually capable of piercing the hardest rock. I have witnessed many people who were not prominent or highly regarded at first, but they had an extraordinary will. They kept doing, kept trying, and kept learning from mistakes. And then, over time, they surpassed everyone to achieve accomplishments that others only dared to dream of. Intelligence may open the door, but perseverance is the key to going all the way. And on that path of perseverance, we cannot avoid one thing: failure. I want you to change the way you look at failure. It is not a stopping point. It is not evidence that you are not good enough. It is a comma. It is a stepping stone, and it is an inevitable part of the learning and growth process. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall, stand up, fall again, and stand up again. We do not call that failure. We call it the learning process, don't we? If that child gave up after the first fall, would they ever be able to walk? Certainly not. Every fall is a lesson, a piece of valuable data for the next attempt. It points out what is not working, where improvement is needed, and which methods need to change. Failure is not the opponent of success. It is the teacher of success. All the successful people you know are not people who never fail. They are people who never give up after failure. They view failure as a laboratory where they test, adjust, and move forward. Edison tried thousands of times before finding the right light bulb filament. Rowling was rejected dozens of times before Harry Potter became a phenomenon. They did not give up. They did it over and over again until they succeeded. Therefore, do not be afraid when things do not go as intended. Embrace those failures, dissect them, learn from them, and turn them into the motivation to continue persisting. So we have explored 3 important pillars of perseverance: the power of intense focus, like Newton, the superior value of persistence compared to intelligence, and finally, viewing failure as a companion and a necessary stepping stone to success. Remember, strength does not lie in doing it right the first time, but in doing it over and over again and not giving up until you achieve what you want. That is the secret of every great achievement. Ask yourself, have I really been persistent with anything yet? And what have I learned from my falls? At this point, we have a clearer picture of the power of persistence. In the next chapter, we will go deeper into how to build habits and maintain that perseverance every day. Chapter 4: Health and Physical Training. It sounds a bit strange, doesn't it? A self-help book that goes deep into exercise, eating, and rest. Many of you might think these are separate topics, reserved only for fitness or nutrition channels. But no, this book has skillfully pointed out an obvious truth that we sometimes forget, which is the inseparable connection between our physical health and our spirit of self-reliance. Let us dive into the 3 main points this chapter wants to convey. First is the philosophy of a sound mind in a sound body. This is a classic Latin saying that has held true for thousands of years. Mens sana in corpore sano. It is not just a mere saying. It is a biological and psychological truth. I remember periods when I overworked, ate poorly, and almost never exercised. The general feeling then was that my body was always heavy and sluggish, as if there were a gray cloud hovering in my head. At that time, decision-making became harder. Concentration significantly decreased, and worse, my emotions were easily shaken. Even small matters could make me irritable or discouraged. Conversely, when I started caring more about exercise and eating properly, everything changed remarkably. Not only was my body healthier, but my mind became extraordinarily clear. Creative ideas flowed, problem-solving skills became sharper, and especially, I had a source of abundant positive energy to face all challenges. This is not a miracle. When your body is properly nourished, moved, blood circulation is good, and the brain receives enough oxygen, your brain functions at its most effective. It is like providing high-grade fuel and regular maintenance for a sophisticated machine. That machine will run much smoother, stronger, and more durably. A healthy body not only gives you the energy to pursue your goals, but is also the solid foundation for building confidence, resilience, and mental recovery after setbacks. Truly, when you feel physically strong, you also feel mentally stronger. The second point is the importance of rest and movement. We often think of physical training as sweat-drenched gym sessions or long-distance runs. That is true, but not enough. Physical training includes both sides, movement and rest. They go together like a shadow. Regarding movement, it does not have to be grueling gym sessions or marathon goals. What matters most is consistency and suitability for your body. Just 30 minutes of brisk walking every day, or a few yoga or swimming sessions a week, is enough to make a big difference. Movement helps release negative energy, improves blood circulation, and stimulates the production of endorphins, the happiness hormones. It not only makes your body more flexible, but is also a natural stress reliever, helping you sleep better and think more clearly. Regarding rest, we often only talk about exercise and forget the other half, which is rest, especially quality sleep. In modern society, sleeping little and working much seems to be seen as a symbol of hard work or success. But this book emphasizes that this is a serious mistake. I used to think I could fight through with only 4 to 5 hours of sleep each night. The result was a foggy brain, irritability, zero creativity, and a severe drop in work performance. Sleep is not just a time for the body to rest. It is when your brain synthesizes information, consolidates memories, and cleans up waste accumulated during the day. quality sleep, 7 to 8 hours each night, will help you wake up with a refreshed spirit, high focus, and readiness for any challenge. Not just sleep, but short breaks during the day are also extremely important. Take 5 to 10 minutes to stand up, walk around, look out the window, or simply close your eyes and breathe deeply after every 1 to 2 hours of intense work. This helps regenerate energy, reduces eye strain, and allows your mind to be soothed and become more flexible. Finally, valuing your health is a way of respecting yourself. This is the key point I want you to reflect on. Health is not just a condition for you to work and live. Health is a profound expression of self-respect and self-love. Think about it. If you had an expensive car or a beautiful house, how carefully would you take care of it? You would maintain it regularly, keep it clean, and never put low-quality fuel in it, wouldn't you? So why, with our own body, the only thing we own from birth until death, a machine more miraculous than any human invention, do we often neglect it? If we do not care for our bodies, do not listen to the signals they send, and do not provide what they need in terms of nutrition, movement, and rest, what message are we sending to ourselves? Is it that we are not worthy, or that we are not important? Taking care of health is not an obligation, but a voluntary act of gratitude toward this body. It is the smartest investment for your future. Good health allows you to experience life more fully, pursue your passions, and contribute value to the world. It is the foundation for all other forms of self-reliance. When you are healthy, you can learn, grow, earn money, build good relationships, and cope with difficulties more strongly. You see, health is not a separate, isolated chapter in the journey of self-reliance. It is the foundation, the solid pillar supporting the entire building of your life. Never underestimate your health. Consider healthy eating, regular exercise, and enough sleep as appointments with yourself that you cannot miss. Ask yourself how you have treated your body today. Are you cherishing the most loyal companion of your life? Start with the smallest changes today, because when you take good care of your body, you are allowing the best version of yourself to shine. Chapter 5: Opportunity and the Power of Observation. We have talked a lot about helping oneself, about mindset, and about discipline. But there is an extremely important factor that we sometimes overlook or only perceive superficially, and that is the ability to see and seize opportunities. Have you ever wondered why some people seem luckier than others? It is not always luck. Most likely, they have a sharper eye and a better trained brain to recognize things that the majority overlooks. And that is the theme of Chapter 5, Opportunity and the Power of Observation. The first point is that opportunity often disguises itself in the cloak of risk. Let us be honest with each other. Opportunity does not always wear a magnificent, brilliant, and easily recognizable outfit. Often it hides itself, even disguising itself under the cloak of risk, inconvenience, a problem to be solved, or a path that few dare to take. Do you remember a time when you turned down a new job because it sounded too difficult, or didn't dare to start a project because the risk was high? Every one of us has been there. We like safety and stability, but it is precisely in the rugged and thorny lands where most people are hesitant and afraid that raw diamonds are hidden. Take business history as an example. How many large companies today were born from solving a problem that seemingly no one wanted to touch? Uber solved the inconvenience of calling traditional taxis. Airbnb saw an opportunity in empty rooms. Or even the first iPhone was once considered a risky product, too different from the phone market at that time. But Steve Jobs and his team looked through that risk to see a completely new future. So, the first lesson here is, do not be hasty in judging a situation just by its appearance, especially when it brings challenges. Ask yourself, behind this risk, is there an opportunity waiting? The second point is to train your observant eyes from the smallest things. So how can we remove that disguise and look through the appearance to see the hidden value? The answer lies in a skill that seems simple but is extremely powerful: the power of observation. It is not that we are born with superhuman eyes that see through everything. This is a skill that needs to be trained, just like exercising. And you can start from the smallest things in daily life. Try this. Today, when you talk to someone, do not just hear what they say. Observe their body language, including their eyes, hand gestures, and posture. How are they really feeling? Is there something hidden behind the words? When you are on the road, do not just look at your phone. Pay attention to small changes in your surroundings, like a new billboard, a cafe that just opened, or simply the way the sunlight hits a building. Or even when you are relaxing, look closely at a flower, a falling raindrop, or a passing cloud. Do not just look. Observe every smallest detail. The goal is not to become a detective, but to train your brain to analyze, connect pieces of information, and see patterns that others overlook. When you do this long enough, you will start to realize that small things can lead to great discoveries. The third point is the story of Newton's falling apple from an observational perspective. Speaking of observation, it is impossible not to mention a classic story that changed the history of science: Isaac Newton and the falling apple. Most of us know the story of Newton sitting under a tree, an apple falling on his head, and the law of universal gravitation being born. But think a little more deeply. Apples had fallen to the ground millions and millions of times before Newton was born. Hundreds or thousands of people had seen an apple fall. So what made Newton different? It was not just seeing the apple fall. It was observing it fall, and most importantly, asking the question, why does it fall? Why does it always fall to the ground instead of flying into the sky? What force pulled it down? Does that force have anything to do with the moon not falling to the earth? From a seemingly trivial phenomenon, Newton dug deep with his sharp observational eyes and unceasingly curious mind, eventually connecting it with the laws of the universe. He did not just accept reality. He observed and questioned that reality. The lesson here is very clear. Opportunity, like the law of gravity, always exists around us, but only those with enough sophistication to observe, enough curiosity to question, and enough courage to view risk as a disguised opportunity can turn seemingly small things into great discoveries and turning points in their lives. So from now on, I want you to try changing the way you look at the world. Do not just look, observe. Do not just hear, listen. Do not just accept, ask questions. Train those eyes every day. Practicing this observation skill, you will begin to see doors and new paths that you never recognized before. You will no longer miss the raw diamonds hidden under the cloak of risk. Remember, the world does not lack opportunity. It only lacks eyes to recognize them. Chapter 6: Self-Learning and the Culture of Reading. We will step into a foundation of all personal development, an indispensable baggage on the path of helping oneself, and that is education. But not education in the sense we often think of with classroom lectures or stressful exams, but something much broader and more encompassing, which is self-learning and the culture of reading. Because the core goal of this chapter is for us to together realize an important truth that education does not just stop at school. Recall the moment you held your graduation diploma in your hand, or when you completed a certain course. That feeling was wonderful, wasn't it? It was as if you had conquered a mountain peak, and now all the doors of knowledge had opened. But in reality, that was only the starting point. Education, in its true sense, is a lifelong journey. The world is constantly changing. Technology is developing at breakneck speed, and new challenges are constantly appearing. If we stop at what we learned from school, we will easily fall behind. Self-learning is not an option. It is a vital survival skill in this 21st century. It is the ability to ask questions, search for knowledge, experiment, and constantly adjust oneself, It requires a spirit of unceasing curiosity, a humility to know that there is still much one does not know, and a courage to step out of the comfort zone of the familiar. Personally, after many years of graduating, I have truly understood the value of asking my own questions and finding my own answers. Whenever I feel stuck or want to delve deeper into a certain field, I do not wait for a course or a teacher to appear. I dig deep myself and connect the pieces of knowledge together. The book Self-Help is also a powerful reminder of this spirit, that if you want to progress and help yourself, you must become proactive in cultivating your own knowledge. So then, who is the best companion on that journey of self-learning? For me, and I believe for many other successful people, it is definitely books. Books are not just pages printed with words. Books are the greatest teachers, the silent soulmates who have accompanied humanity through many centuries. In each page of a book, you can find the wisdom of the greatest minds, the vivid life experiences of extraordinary people, and ideas that have changed the world. It is like you can sit down to converse directly with Plato, Seneca, or even contemporary authors you admire whenever you want, without worrying about geographical distance or time. I still remember the feeling of the first time I read a book that completely changed the way I perceived an issue. It was not a classroom lecture, but a deep, inner dialogue, a light shining into the dark corners of my thoughts. Books give us multi-dimensional perspectives, challenge deep-seated prejudices, and expand our worldview. They help us learn from the mistakes of others without having to go through them ourselves, helping us stand on the shoulders of giants to see further. But friends, in a world flooded with information like today, reading is not just about receiving. It is a skill that requires sophistication. And this is also the third important point we need to talk about, which is how to filter the knowledge we take in. Think about it. Every day, we are surrounded by endless information from the internet, social networks, newspapers, and books. Without an effective filter, we can easily get lost and distracted by shallow or even misleading knowledge. So how do we filter? First, do not read everything you see, but read with a purpose. Before opening a book, ask yourself, what value does this book have for me right now? What problem does it help me solve? Or what field does it expand my understanding of? Second, be an active reader, not a passive one. Do not just skim. Ask questions, underline, take notes, debate with the author in your mind, and relate what you read to your own life experiences. Critiquing, even with classic books, is an extremely important thinking skill. Third, seek diversity and verification. Do not just read one type of book, one genre, or one viewpoint. Read books from different cultures and opposing schools of thought. If information sounds too good or too scary, find out more from other reliable sources to verify. Who is the author? Do they have expertise in this field? And is their data source reliable? I often create for myself a diverse knowledge menu with a bit of philosophy to deepen my thinking, a bit of science to understand how the world works, a bit of personal development to sharpen skills, and of course, inspiring stories to nourish the soul. Most important is the balance and suitability for my personal goals at each stage. In short, self-learning and the culture of reading are not just about adding knowledge. They are about building a flexible mind that knows how to think critically, adapt, and constantly evolve. Education is not just a stage. It is a continuous journey that lasts throughout life. The book Self-Help, though published a long time ago, still retains its value in its spirit of self-equipping with knowledge baggage, becoming even more urgent than ever in the modern world. Make every day an opportunity to learn something new, whether from an article, a podcast, a deep conversation, or most especially, from a book. Let books become your indispensable companion on the journey of helping yourself and reaching the best version of yourself. Chapter 7: Self-Leadership and Discipline. Dear friends, when we speak of self-help, the first thing we often think of are grand goals such as gaining wealth, success, or happiness. But to achieve all those things, where must we begin? The exact answer is from within, from the ability to control our desires and from learning how to manage ourselves effectively. This is the core goal of this chapter: controlling desires and self-management. Ask yourself how many times a day you feel pulled away by momentary impulses, by procrastination, or by choices that you later regret. That is exactly when we need the power of self-leadership. And to lead effectively, we need the ultimate weapon called discipline. The first point we must engrave in our minds is that the greatest victory is the victory over oneself. Socrates once said that conquering oneself is the first and greatest of all victories. It sounds like a grand statement, but in reality, it is hidden within every small moment of our lives. It is not about defeating an opponent in a ring or conquering a towering mountain peak. This victory takes place every morning when the alarm goes off and you want to turn it off to sleep more. It is the inner struggle when you stand before the refrigerator at midnight, knowing that an unhealthy snack will not be good for you. It is when you want to scroll through useless social media, but choose to sit at your desk or read a book instead. Every time you overcome those small impulses and momentary desires, you are strengthening your power over yourself. You are telling yourself that you are the one in control and the one who makes the final decision. This may seem trivial, but as it accumulates, it creates a solid foundation for all other successes. Because if you cannot conquer your own laziness or the temptation of ease, how can you overcome larger challenges in your career or relationships? This is not a one-time battle, but a continuous journey, a ceaseless struggle between the person you want to become and the person carrying old habits. But remember that every time you choose the harder path, the right path, instead of the easy one, it is a small victory, and the sum of those small victories will create a strong person capable of true self-leadership. Speaking of self-control, there is a small but incredibly powerful habit that we often underestimate: punctuality. Being on time is not just a minimum courtesy. It is a concrete and visible expression of how disciplined and in control of yourself you truly are. I remember when I was young, I used to think being on time was just a boring social rule, and that arriving a bit late didn't matter. But then, through many missed opportunities, making others wait, and most importantly, feeling stressed and rushed myself, I realized that punctuality is a vital foundation. When you are on time, you are showing respect not only to others, but also to your own time. You are affirming that you have the ability to plan, to predict, and to control your behavior. You are not passive in the face of external factors or internal desires to delay. Think about how a person who is always on time is perceived. They are reliable, professional, and organized. These qualities all stem from their ability to self-manage. Conversely, someone who is frequently late, no matter how talented, will find it difficult to build absolute trust and prestige. The habit of being on time helps you reduce stress, increase efficiency, and most importantly, builds a deep belief in your ability to self-control. Starting from being on time, you are laying solid bricks for a more organized and purposeful life. Finally, I want to share with you a truth that discipline creates true freedom. It sounds contradictory, doesn't it? We often think of discipline as constraint, as rigid rules that force us to give up things we like. But think a little deeper. What are we usually imprisoned by? It is procrastination, bad habits, impulsiveness, and thoughtless choices that bring regret. Discipline is the key that opens the door out of those invisible prisons. When you discipline yourself to wake up early, you have more freedom of time to do what you want instead of being rushed and stressed. When you discipline your spending, you will have the financial freedom to pursue larger projects and dreams. When you discipline your training and healthy eating, you will have the health freedom to enjoy life to the fullest. Look at an Olympic athlete. They must go through thousands of hours of disciplined training because they know that the very limits set by discipline today will bring them the freedom to compete at their best and achieve glory. Discipline is not the limitation of freedom. It is the path to escape the bondage of instant desires and bad habits. It gives you the power to create the life you truly desire. So, do not try to change everything all at once. Choose a small area, a simple habit like waking up 15 minutes earlier each day or being on time for all appointments. Remember that every small act of discipline today is a brick building the great freedom of tomorrow. Chapter 8: Money, Use and Abuse. In this chapter, we will touch upon a topic that, whether we like it or not, profoundly affects every aspect of life: money. It sounds pragmatic, doesn't it? But in reality, it is the foundation. The first and most fundamental principle that the book wants us to take to heart is live below your means. Many people think that being wealthy means earning a lot of money, owning luxury items, or having a glamorous life. But this book teaches us a different mindset. True wealth lies in your ability to live freely, unencumbered by financial burdens or worries about money. And the first key to achieving that freedom is living below your means. Imagine you have a shirt that is slightly larger than your body. It gives you room to breathe, to move comfortably, and to be flexible in all activities. Conversely, a tight shirt makes you feel cramped and uncomfortable, and every movement becomes heavy. Money is the same. Living below your means does not mean being stingy or miserly to the point of self-torture. It means proactively controlling your cash flow to create a financial buffer. This buffer is freedom. Freedom to not worry when unexpected events strike, such as job loss, illness, or unforeseen expenses. Freedom to say no to jobs you do not like or to unsuitable opportunities just because you need money. Freedom to pursue passions, to learn new things, and to spend time with family and yourself without the weight of making ends meet pressing down on you. I used to think that whatever I earned, I had to spend. And you know, the feeling of always struggling, always being broke at the end of every month is terrifying. It robs you of peace in your soul and makes every decision rushed and thoughtless. When I started practicing living below my means, even just a little, I felt a distinct difference. It was relief. It was the right to choose. And it was confidence. Remember, the goal is not to become the richest person in the graveyard, but to be the freest person. And that freedom begins with you controlling your money instead of letting it control you. The second point is that debt is the shackle of the soul. Speaking of financial freedom, we cannot fail to mention its greatest enemy, debt. This book likens debt to the shackles of the soul. It sounds heavy, But think about what happens when you carry a burden of debt on your shoulders. Do you feel bound by mortgages, car loans, or even credit card debt to buy things you don't really need? The worry of repayment weighs heavily on your mind, causing sleeplessness, stress, and even the loss of joy in life. Debt robs you of your power of choice. You have to do a job you dislike just to have money to pay off debt. You have to delay dreams of travel, learning, or starting a business because of financial burdens. You are no longer the proactive person in your own life, but become a slave to numbers and due dates. Consumer debt, especially high-interest credit card debt, is like a bottomless pit. It brings instant joy when you own the item you want, but follows it with a long string of days of regret, worry, and working hard to escape that cycle. The goal is not to never borrow, because in life, there are necessary and investment-oriented loans like buying a house or education. It is about minimizing consumer debt and smartly managing necessary loans. Before deciding to borrow, ask yourself, is the momentary joy of owning that item worth trading for many months or years of worry and hard work to pay it off? Free your soul from these invisible shackles. Set a goal to pay off debt as soon as possible, starting with the highest interest loans. Every time a debt is paid off, you will feel a weight lifted and a part of your freedom returned to you. This leads us to another core truth that the book wants to convey, a saying that has become a North Star for many generations. Money is a good servant, but a bad master. When you master money, it becomes a powerful tool, a loyal servant. It serves you. It helps you achieve goals, protect your family, and contribute to society. It buys you time, peace, and precious experiences. You use money to invest in yourself, your health, your relationships, and things that truly bring value and meaning to life. Then, money is a means for you to live a more fulfilling life. But when you let money master you, life becomes an endless race, an inescapable pursuit of materials. You work tirelessly just to have more money, then use that money to buy things you think will fill the void inside, but they don't. You become a slave to making money and the numbers in your account, losing the true values of life. Time for family, friends, health, joy from simple things, or personal growth. Recall, when did you feel happiest? Was it when you just bought an expensive item? Or when you spent time with loved ones, experienced something new, or helped someone? Real happiness often does not come from the amount of money you have, but from how you use that money and the values you create. When money becomes the master, it will demand too much sacrifice, health, time, and even dignity. It will haunt you, cause you constant worry, and finally, you realize you have lost yourself in an endless pursuit. So, the message of this chapter is clear. Turn money into an ally, a tool that serves your life, and do not let it become a shackle or a ruler. Start by living below your means, eliminating bad debt, and always reminding yourself of the true value of money, which is a means, not the ultimate goal. This is the solid foundation for us to build a more abundant, free, and meaningful life. Do not let financial worry rob you of your peace and potential. Join me in the following chapters to explore more deeply how we can master our lives, not just in terms of money, but also in terms of time, energy, and spirit. Chapter 9: Character. The Real Aristocracy. When hearing the word aristocracy, we immediately often think of magnificent castles, noble lineages, or high-ranking titles passed down through generations. We imagine people born into a different class, enjoying privileges that commoners can hardly touch. But Samuel Smiles, with the deep insight of a thinker, paints a completely different portrait. He asserts that true aristocracy, genuine character, does not lie in bloodline or social status, but in our very essence as human beings. The value of character always rises above all status and external glamour. And to shape that essence, there is no guide more reliable than conscience. You know, that whispering voice within every time we stand before a choice, even the smallest one. It is our own moral compass, always pointing toward the north of righteousness, regardless of storms or frivolous temptations. Smiles calls conscience the inner light, a lighthouse illuminating the true path. Its strength lies not in imposition, but in voluntary obedience, in the serenity when you know you have done the right thing. Think about it. Have you ever done something that you knew clearly was wrong, even though no one saw it, but your conscience kept gnawing at you incessantly? That is that voice. Conversely, when you help someone without expecting anything in return, or you keep a promise, even if it causes you to sacrifice personal interest, you feel a peace, a self-respect that is incomparable. Conscience is not bribed by money, not enchanted by power, nor swayed by false praises. It is our truest friend, the most loyal advisor we have. Listening to and acting according to conscience not only helps us avoid mistakes, but also builds a solid foundation for our character. When we listen to the voice of conscience, we are step by step creating a character that Smiles calls the superior man, a gentleman in modern society. In today's society, the concept of gentleman is sometimes misunderstood, associated with elegant suits or a flamboyant outward demeanor. But for Smiles, and I completely agree, The gentleman is not a title one is born with, but a status built from within. A gentleman is not necessarily a wealthy, powerful person or someone with high academic degrees. It is someone with dignity, with respect for themselves and others. It is the person who keeps a promise, even the smallest one, because words are the expression of reliability. It is someone who is not afraid to admit mistakes and always strives to correct them, as that is a sign of courage and responsibility. It is someone with compassion, ready to defend what is right and the vulnerable, not for personal gain, but for justice. A gentleman is kind in every action and every word, not only when someone is watching, but also when no one notices. They carry within them a sincerity, an integrity that makes everyone around feel secure and respected. Becoming a true gentleman is a journey of continuous self-improvement, a journey where the greatest reward is self-respect and the sincere esteem of others. And one of the strongest pillars of that character, the foundation of trust and respect, is honesty. People often say honesty is the best policy, a saying that might sound old, but its value never ages. Why? Because it builds trust. Trust is the foundation of all relationships, from friends and family to business partners. You can deceive a few people for a while, but you cannot deceive everyone forever. And more importantly, you cannot deceive your own conscience forever. Dishonesty, whether a small lie or a fraudulent act, will ultimately erode prestige, break trust, and leave a hard-to-heal scar in the soul. It forces us to live in fear of being discovered, in worry of covering up the truth, and that is truly exhausting. On the contrary, honesty brings peace of mind, a reputation that cannot be bought with money, and a life that does not need hiding or fear. I always believe that a true word, though it may cause discomfort initially, is still 10,000 times better than a sweet lie that contains deceit. Because only when we are honest with ourselves and others can we live a full and meaningful life. In summary, through Chapter 9, Character, the Real Aristocracy, Samuel Smiles once again reminds us of the core values of human beings, that external status, wealth, or fame are only fleeting. What remains forever, what defines us most profoundly, is character. It is the conscience that leads the way, the spirit of a gentleman, and unshakable honesty. So, you and I, what will we choose to build our lives? An outward glamour or a noble soul from within? The answer, I believe, already lies within the call of each of our consciences. Chapter 10, The Examples of Those Who Came Before. Have you ever felt lost at the crossroads of life, not knowing which way to turn or where to start? I believe every one of us has experienced that feeling at least once. And sometimes the answer does not lie in what we think up ourselves, but in our willingness to look back, look across, and look toward those who have walked a similar path. First is the inspirational power of biography. Think about it. A biography is not just dry historical pages about someone's life. It is a manual for living, written with sweat, tears, resounding successes, and bitter failures of a real human being. When we read about the lives of Abraham Lincoln, Marie Curie, Nelson Mandela, or any great figure, we are not just reading about the past. We are searching for a spark, searching for motivation, and more importantly, searching for evidence that human beings have the ability to overcome adversity. Great people are not invincible superheroes. They also failed, doubted themselves, and faced challenges that seemed insurmountable. It is in those moments that their way of getting back up, their persistence in pursuing their ideals, is what makes us admire and learn from them. If Lincoln could overcome a series of political failures and personal tragedies to become one of the greatest presidents in American history, then perhaps our difficulties also have a way out. If Marie Curie could dedicate her whole life to science in a society still full of prejudice, then we can also find the motivation to pursue our passion. The inspirational power of those stories is immense. It sows in our hearts the belief that no matter how thorny the path is, there is always hope. However, we must remember not to mimic blindly, but to learn the spirit. There is something extremely important we need to remember when learning from the biographies of great people. Reading a biography is not about becoming their clone. You are not Marie Curie, not Steve Jobs, or anyone else. Different times, different circumstances, different people. Trying to copy their path exactly is not only unrealistic, but can also lead you astray from yourself. What we need to learn is the spirit. Learn how they think, how they solve problems, how they face failure, and how they maintain will and steadfastness. That is the spirit of persistence and not giving up. The courage to face failure, innovative thinking, and the ability to recover after stumbles. These are the core values, the principles of living that shaped their greatness. Imagine it like this. Just like a chef learning from a master's recipe, they do not rigidly copy every gram of ingredient or every smallest step. Instead, they learn the soul of the dish, the technique, the balance of flavors, and the cooking philosophy behind it. From there, they will create their own version of the dish, bearing their personal mark while still retaining the essence of the teacher. I once had a period of reading voraciously about legendary investors, trying to understand their every buying and selling decision. But then I realized that trying to imitate their every move was futile because the market context and my resources were completely different. Instead, I learned how they thought about risk, value, and long-term vision. That was what helped me build my own strategy. And do not forget the influence of good examples within the family. Role models are not always famous names in books or distant historical figures. Often, the strongest and closest role models are right beside us, like grandparents, parents, siblings, the relatives in the family. They may not change the world, but they have changed your world. They may not be known by the whole world, but they are the ones who shaped the person you are today. I still remember my paternal grandmother, a woman who worked hard her whole life and never complained or gave up no matter how difficult life was. Her resilience, her altruism, the way she faced difficulties with a smile, the way she nurtured the family. Those are the most vivid and authentic lessons that no book can fully provide. Or your parents, with their silent sacrifice and ceaseless efforts to give you a better life. Values such as hard work, honesty, love, and patience that they taught not only with words, but through their daily actions. Those are the most precious examples. These examples not only inspire, but also anchor us, reminding us of our roots, of family values, and the true meaning of life. They are small lighthouses, illuminating our path in the darkest nights. So, when we seek help from those who came before, let us broaden our horizons. Read biographies of great people for grand motivation, but do not forget to look at the life around you. Look at your loved ones to find the most authentic and meaningful lessons. Learn from the Spirit, not from the template. Then we can confidently walk on our own path, carrying the fire of those who lit the way, but creating our own unique light. Chapter 11: The Willpower to Overcome Hardships. It sounds heavy, doesn't it? But believe me, this is a chapter full of power and inspiration, a strong reminder of the extraordinary potential sleeping within each of us. First of all, hardship is the test of character. You know, life is not always a bed of roses. There will be times when we fall. There will be challenges that seem insurmountable, moments when we feel like we are standing before a towering wall with no way out. It could be a failure at work, a broken relationship, a serious health issue, or simply the daily pressures of life piling up. But it is in those moments that those seemingly inanimate stumbling blocks are actually the most precious touchstones. Hardship not only tests our limits, but also reveals true mettle, resilience, and the inner fighting spirit of each person. Just as a sword needs to be tempered through fire and cold water to become sharp and durable, we also need to go through trials to forge our souls and know how strong we truly are. I believe that without difficulty, we would never know how much we can endure or how we can rise after a fall. Have you ever looked back at an extremely difficult period in your life and wondered how you got through it or how you did that? That is when your character was affirmed, sharpened, and you created a stronger version of yourself. If you have never experienced that feeling, then perhaps you are standing before that very opportunity. So do not hesitate to embrace it. Secondly, is the story of people with disabilities overcoming their fate. When talking about willpower, nothing is more powerful than real stories, especially from people who had to face great challenges right from birth or during their lives. I am talking about people with disabilities, those whom destiny seems to have placed in an unequal battle with physical limitations. They not only learn to accept their bodies, but also turn those physical limitations into extraordinary motivation to rise above all prejudices and barriers. You have heard of Nick Vujicic, a man with no arms and no legs, who still lives a full life, inspiring millions of people around the world with his radiant smile and high-energy speeches, or the stories of artists who paint with their feet, blind musicians who feel and compose music with their whole soul, and Paralympic athletes who overcome physical pain to conquer new heights. These stories are not just for us to admire, but are a powerful reminder that true limits do not lie in the body, but in the mind. When a person without arms can still paint beautiful pictures, or a person who cannot see can still see the world in a different way, then what reason do we, who have all our senses and full capacity, have to flinch before smaller difficulties? They have proven that with a resilient heart, an iron will, and a spirit that never gives up, nothing is impossible. They turn what others consider fate into a starting point for extraordinary journeys. Finally, is the way to turn obstacles into springboards. So, how can we, who may not face such harsh trials, but have our own adversities, learn from them? The secret lies in changing the perspective, turning obstacles into springboards. Every time you face a difficulty, instead of complaining, blaming fate, or being discouraged, try asking what this is teaching me and what I can learn from this to become stronger and wiser. See failures not as a stopping point, but as a tactical step back so you can gain momentum, look back at the map, and choose a better path. You know, airplanes always take off against the wind. The stronger the wind, the greater the lift, helping the plane soar into the sky more easily. Similarly, the obstacles and adversities in life are precisely those headwind. They are not meant to drown you, but to create the necessary pressure to reveal your hidden strength and push you to a new height. Imagine a compressed spring. The greater the pressure, the higher it bounces when released. Life is the same. The pressures and difficulties are what are compressing you, and when you learn to release that energy positively, you will bounce back stronger than ever. Chapter 11. The willpower to overcome hardships has shown us that facing adversity is not a terrible thing, but a golden opportunity to forge character, explore potential, and grow significantly. Do not fear difficulties. Embrace them, because they are the greatest teachers of your life. I hope you have found the motivation and a new perspective to face all the storms ahead. Remember, you are much stronger than you think, and every challenge is an invitation for you to prove it. Chapter 12. The role of women and the family. It sounds traditional, doesn't it? But believe me, this book does not follow the worn path of rigid definitions. Instead, it opens a deeply humanistic and practical perspective on the profound influence of the background, of the family cradle, and especially the creative role of women in forming an individual and a generation. This is not just about predetermined roles, but about the energy, the shaping, and the wordless education that we receive from our earliest years. First, the mother is the first teacher. In each person's journey of development, who is the first to lay the foundation for the values and initial lessons of life? The book emphasizes that the mother, or the woman acting as the primary caregiver, is usually the first and most important teacher. This is not a restrictive definition, but an acknowledgement of a common reality regarding the strongest bond and influence during the personality-forming years. They teach us our first lessons about love, about limits, about patience, and sharing, things that no school can teach in such a natural and profound way. My first memory of my mother is not a lesson in class, but how she patiently taught me to tie my shoelaces, or how she explained why I shouldn't pick flowers in the neighbor's garden. Those were lessons about respect, about personal boundaries, and about loving the environment. All of this was instilled not through books, but through every meal, every bedtime story, and every hug when I stumbled. The book calls this the education of the heart, where emotions, intuition, and empathy are nurtured. A strong, selfless, and wise mother will sow seeds of self-esteem, resilience, and the ability to love others in her child's heart. One might ask, without that solid foundation, could we confidently step out into this vast world? Secondly is building a family environment that nurtures willpower. So how do we make that cradle not just a place where we grow up, but a place where we mature with a steady willpower and a spirit that does not fear challenges? The book does not talk about creating a flawless, perfect environment, but an environment that creates conditions for comprehensive development. A family environment that nurtures willpower is not a family without difficulties, but a family that knows how to face and overcome difficulties. There, children are encouraged to challenge themselves, allowed to fail, and more importantly, learn how to stand up after falling. This is a place where dreams, no matter how small, are heard and encouraged. I remember when I was a child, I wanted to make a kite myself. It kept soaring up and then falling back down. I wanted to give up, but my parents didn't do it for me. They just sat beside me, helped me find the flaws, and encouraged me to try again. Finally, the kite flew, and though not high, the joy and the lesson in persistence were priceless. That is building a mental gym right at home, where members are trained in willpower, courage, and resilience. The encouragement and trust that parents give to their children are like seeds sown in fertile soil, waiting for the day they sprout and grow into sturdy, great trees. Thirdly, companionship is more important than indulgence. And this is a point that I think, in modern society, we need to think more about. Companionship is more important than indulgence. Love is sometimes easily confused with clearing away every obstacle on a child's path. But the book points out that this is a serious mistake. What is companionship? It is being beside the child, listening to them, guiding them, but also letting them experience and draw lessons for themselves. It is about providing the tools, not completing the work for them. It is about being a big friend, a mentor, rather than a rescuer at all times. When I faced a difficult decision, my parents never decided for me. They would sit down, analyze the pros and cons, listen to my fears, and finally let me choose for myself. They accompanied me in that process, but did not indulge me by taking away my right to self-determination. Conversely, indulgence is depriving the child of the opportunity to learn from failure. It is creating an illusory pink world that makes it very hard for the child to adapt when stepping into reality. An overindulged child will lack inner strength, independence, and problem-solving skills. Love is not about paving every road, but about walking with the child through rough roads, teaching them how to overcome obstacles, and trusting in their abilities. Imagine an athlete being constantly held up by their parents on the training field. He would never know how to run, fall, and stand up on his own to win a real race. Life is the same. In summary, Chapter 12 has opened a humanistic perspective on the role of women and the family. It is not about imposing roles, but about recognizing the creative power of the family home, especially the influence of the mother or the woman acting as the primary caregiver. the mother is the sower, the family is the fertile soil, and companionship is the sunlight for those seeds to sprout and grow into confident, strong-willed, loving, and responsible human beings. Take time to reflect on your own home, on how you are nurturing it, and on the precious lessons you have received. Chapter 13: Living with Purpose. We have gone through many chapters together, exploring all sorts of secrets to improving ourselves, from time management to overcoming fear, from practicing good habits to building a positive mindset. But in the end, what does all of that serve? The biggest question, and perhaps the question that each of us has asked ourselves at least once, is, what is the meaning of life? And how do we live with purpose? In this chapter 13, I want us to summarize that self-help journey together, no longer through small tips or specific techniques, but with a broader view of the true meaning of existence. Let's discuss how we can create a life that is not only full, but also deep, a life worth living and worth remembering. First is identifying clear goals for life, the compass that orients the soul. Let's start with something that seems obvious, yet is extremely difficult to implement. Identifying clear goals for your life. It sounds grand, doesn't it? But think about it. A ship that sets sail without a chart, without a specific destination, will drift aimlessly. And no matter how modernly equipped it is, it cannot complete any voyage. Our lives are the same. If we do not know where we want to go, who we want to become, then no matter how hard we work, we will find it difficult to feel complete. I remember in the past, I used to think goals had to be grand, like changing the world or becoming a millionaire. But then I realized goals can be smaller, more intimate. But the important thing is that they must be true to you. They must stem from your core values. It could be becoming a good father or mother, a reliable friend, an inspiring artist, or simply living a peaceful and financially free life. Identifying goals is not a task done only once. It is a continuous process of self-questioning, of listening to your heart. Take quiet time. Ask yourself, what is truly important to me? What are my core values? What kind of person do I want to become? A goal does not necessarily have to be a single destination, but can be a series of small destinations, milestones that help you shape the path. When you have a compass, even through storms or being lost, you still know how to find the right direction. That is the power of purpose. Secondly, living for others is also a way of self-help. This is the power of connection. When we talk about self-help, many people often think it is only about taking care of oneself, focusing on personal development and individual success. But there is an interesting paradox I have learned. One of the most powerful ways to help yourself is to live for others. This sounds contradictory, doesn't it? But think about it. When you help someone, how do you feel? You feel valuable, useful, and above all, you create a connection. Isolation is one of the greatest enemies of happiness and self-help. Humans are social creatures. We need connection and sharing to develop. When you spend time with family, friends, or even a stranger in need of help, you are building lasting relationships. You are giving, but at the same time, you are receiving. Receiving sharing, trust, and a deep sense of fulfillment that money can hardly buy. Empathy, compassion, and acts of kindness not only make the world better, but also enrich your soul. We learn to see life from many perspectives, becoming more resilient and more tolerant. That is not blind sacrifice, but a smart investment in your own happiness and stability. Helping others does not make you weaker. It makes you much stronger. The final point is leaving a spiritual legacy, timeless imprints. This brings us to a most profound notion when considering the meaning of life. Leaving a spiritual legacy. We will all eventually depart. Material wealth and fame may fade over time, but what will remain? It is the values you lived by, the influence you created in the lives of others, the seeds of love and wisdom you planted. A spiritual legacy is not a grand headstone or your name inscribed on a high-rise building. It is the stories told about you, the lessons passed down, the inspiration you seeded in the hearts of others. It could be the kindness you showed a stranger, the resilience you displayed when facing difficulty, or simply the way you lived an authentic, kind, and meaningful life. It is the way you touch the lives of those around you, making their lives better, if only a little. Think about the people who inspired you. They don't necessarily have to be great figures in history. Sometimes it is just a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, or a friend. What they left behind was not property, but a part of their spirit that lived in you and continues to guide you. Living with purpose is the awareness that your life is not just for yourself. It is an opportunity to create a chain reaction of good things, leaving a gentle but persistent mark in the flow of time. So there it is. Living with purpose is not about seeking a single formula, but a holistic journey of clearly defining what you want, opening your heart to the world around you, and being aware that your life can be a source of inspiration for those who come after. It requires courage to look deep inside, kindness to look outward, and a vision to look forward. Live each day like a meaningful page of a book, a chapter of a story that you write with your own hand. Do not fear challenges, for it is they that will help you discover your true strength and purpose. Leave your own mark, not just for yourself, but for the whole world. So we have turned the final pages together, pondering the core ideas from this valuable self-help book. We have gone through concepts, advice, and perhaps you have found fresh seeds for yourself. But as every true self-help book implies, reading is only the beginning. Knowledge is power, yes, but that power only truly explodes when it is transformed into action, into actual change in our lives. You know, I often think like this. Your life, in essence, is the greatest book being written every day. Each passing day is a line, each decision is a sentence, and each challenge overcome is a new chapter written. You are the author. You have the power to hold the pen. You have the choice of the story you want to tell, the direction you want to draw. So, the time has come. Don't be just a passive reader anymore. Start writing your own chapter today. It doesn't have to be a massive novel immediately. Start with a sentence, a very small paragraph. It could be a daring decision, a persistent new habit, or simply a positive thought maintained throughout the day. Just like me, when starting this channel, I only thought I would give it a try, and then, bit by bit, the story gradually took shape. And to turn these thoughts into specific actions, let's start with something very close to us. Is there any bad habit you are nurturing the intention to quit, but keep procrastinating? Maybe it is staying up late, scrolling through your phone too much, or a perfectionism that keeps you from starting. Don't hesitate to share in the comments section below. Sometimes, making an intention public is a powerful first step to making it a reality. Who knows? I might also share a weakness of mine, and we can encourage each other and overcome it together. Consider this your first small commitment to the journey of writing your life's book. If you feel these shares are valuable, if you crave to continue the journey of self-discovery and expanding your horizons through mindset-changing books, then do not forget one extremely important thing. Press the subscribe button and the little bell icon next to it so you don't miss any mindset-changing books that we will dissect together in the future. With me, we will continue to dig deep into the treasure trove of knowledge, seeking new inspirations so that each passing day is a small step forward. Let's create a community of people who crave development, who crave to write the chapters of their lives meaningfully. Thank you very much for spending your precious time listening and accompanying me in this video. Remember, your book is waiting for you to write it. Bye-bye.